Hi, welcome to Mercurius Being Astro Update. I am Amy Jensen and I'm here to go through the energies of the Taurus full moon lunar eclipse. This will be exact on November 8th at 5:02 a.m. Central Time in the United States. So the time will vary and the visibility of it will also vary. So you can look that up for your location. So what we have at this full moon is we have Mercury, the Sun, and Venus all together in Scorpio. And this, don't worry about the orientation, what houses they're in, because I just pulled a chart for where I am. So the Sun and the Moon, of course, always opposing each other at a full moon. And then we have Uranus and the North Node joining the Moon in Taurus. And at the same time, we have Saturn squaring both the planets in Scorpio and the planets in Taurus, and Saturn is squaring that from Aquarius. So let's just get started with that energy, and I'm just going to try to keep this one a little more brief. But please look back at the last video, the October 25th eclipse. I think a lot of those energies are still playing out at this time, and that really kind of was the beginning. But actually I think this portal started back even in September. This has been going on, I would say, a good month, so the end of September or so. And with any eclipse, it can really be exact. I mean, the exact point is the exact point, but the energies can run several months on either side where we really can still feel the remnants and the reverberations of the eclipse energies playing out in our lives. So my first note that I wrote down was don't fall back into fear, okay? It's a super active time after this lunation, and I guess I'll move into that, but just everything is moving, and then something that keeps getting touched off after the lunation. So very active, okay? I wrote on my notes, Saturn is not playing. Okay, so Saturn is squaring, like I said, those planets in Scorpio, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, and it's also squaring the planets in Taurus, Uranus, Moon, and North Node. So Saturn, the god of structure and foundation, delays, remember, it does not deny, but it wants you to go back and really observe old patterns and old behaviors. It can feel really harsh. It can bring up shame and some of these really deeply ingrained beliefs that are very limiting, and again, very limiting and make you feel very small, because Saturn can have that effect of it is the authority figure, and it can have that kind of belittling effect on you. However, so going into the shame or shadow, which is Scorpio, and then the self-worth, which is Taurus, so it's squaring both of those energies. But what Saturn wants us to do when Saturn is active, and yes, it's not everybody's favorite planet, but it really should be in many ways, because it forces, ruling the bones, ruling concrete, ruling the skin, ruling structures, ruling everything foundational in our lives, whether it's in our bodies or, around us, hardening, calcifying. There are times, bone needs to be rebuilt. Structures need to be rebuilt. Relationships need to be rebuilt. And sometimes these things need to be torn apart or torn down. I got this image of if anyone has done remodeling in their home, you take off the sheetrock and you get down to the studs in the building and you take out all the old insulation, maybe you have to redo the wiring, and it's like, nobody even wants to do that. They want the result from that. They want the, oh wow, this looks beautiful, but they don't want that part. But if you don't go in and clear out all the old junk to restructure, it's not really going to be satisfying, number one, and it's also not going to be probably sustainable or like a sense of real growth or real achievement. And so Saturn pushes us towards, writing the thesis paper, and don't take shortcuts. Do the homework, don't do shortcuts. So this is a time, again, Saturn is not playing. It wants you to do the inner work because it wants you to go through this gateway and move into the new that you are becoming, because also Uranus is not playing as well, and Uranus is in the mix. So Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, which Saturn is in, and Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So then Saturn is squaring Uranus, and they've been at this for a while, testing into new things, going back into the old, wanting to move forward into trying something new and innovating. It's like, okay, but that's not working, again. So once we examine our old patterns and the old foundations and really allow ourselves to honestly evaluate them and to be ready to revamp, take that sledgehammer to the sheetrock and see what's there, clear it out, then you can rebuild. And Uranus, like I said, it's right there and it wants you to. And Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, which is all about values and self-worth. It's about Taurus rules the throat, but it also rules the heart center. So it's really a lot about new values and installing a new operating system and an upgrade and breaking free of old, limiting thoughts and behaviors. So journal, journal, journal. Whatever these thoughts or beliefs that come up, and if they make you feel small, if they make you feel shameful, if they make you feel like a little kid that did something wrong, evaluate them. And then from that, you need to take the steps forward, learning from those things. I wrote that somewhere else. I kind of had some other things that came in. So owning your own shadow, I wrote, so it doesn't bite you in the ass, basically. So moving forward, and actually I put that in regard to the nodes. The North Node, of course, is our evolutionary path forward. That's in Taurus, conjunct the moon, conjunct Uranus. So that's the head of the dragon. The fallback is the South Node, and that's in Scorpio. That's the tail of the dragon. But how about we mine the wisdom, all the shame, the beliefs, the limiting thoughts that are in the old behaviors, and use whatever that is that's pointing towards. Usually it's pointing at the thing that you want, which is the northern and the head of the dragon, but integrating the wisdom. What were you protecting by those behaviors in yourself? What strategy did it serve you? And use that knowledge from these past behaviors to integrate them, to release them, to strengthen and light your new path going forward. And I got the image of like moving forward on firmer footing. So it's almost like the paver stones or cobblestones when you lay them down, and then over time they get kind of wonky. It sounds like, I guess if you know me, yeah, we are always doing something to our house and something always needs fixing. And so the cobblestone on these steps, over time get like unsteady, and then the stuff around them kind of falls away. And so to have, again, clearing out the old, so you can set those concrete blocks back down and have a really firm new path. And again, maybe you change the route of the path as it goes through the garden, which would also be a Taurus association. Okay, so at this time, we have Mars kind of reaching out. So it's reaching out an olive branch to Saturn. So Mars and Saturn are trining each other. So they're really smooth. So like any changes, any work, any sledgehammering you're doing, any going down and evaluating and being really honest about these limiting behaviors, Mars in the sign of Gemini, which is all about communication and journaling and making connections, it is right there. It is like, yes, you've got the energy to do it. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I've got this much energy to do all these things. And you find like, you are, because it's like a speeding up of clearing these things out so that you can go forward. So there's that energy that's really good and supportive. Mars also has a quintile to Chiron in Aries, and it's very close to being exact as well. It's a 13-minute from being exact as a quintile. Creative aspect, just a really creative opportunity to heal in the sign of Aries, which Mars rules, and Aries being individuating yourself and having that assertive and initiating energy and having your own agency. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last video, but the last time that Mars was in Gemini and had a full retrograde period in Gemini was in 1990 to 1991. So if you would like to look back into that time of your life, just see what was going on in your life and see if there are any of those themes that are coming up. You know, some of you weren't even born at that time, but for those of you who were, you may have some recollections, and that also might lead you at this time. So Mars is squaring at this lunation Jupiter and Neptune. And so I think Jupiter and Neptune are kind of challenging Mars, which is in Gemini, again, that sign of communication and gathering information. It's really challenging Mars to question and to gather more information. And then Neptune and Jupiter are going to expand the view that you have, and really the mental view and the capacity to take more information in and to take more information from all sides and all sources so that you can really sort it and understand it and feel it then in your body. After this lunation on the 8th, we have Neptune will be trining, nice harmonious aspect, to Venus on the 10th, Mercury on the 12th, and the Sun on the 14th. And then Jupiter will be trining, that again, that nice harmonious aspect, Venus on the 15th, Mercury on the 16th, and the Sun on the 20th. So these planets still in Scorpio, still moving through your basement, your shadow energy, and really contacting all of that good stuff. Neptune inspires, and let's see if I wrote anything specifically here or if I'm just riffing on this. Okay, I think I'm just riffing. All right, so Neptune inspires. I wrote ability to smooth out the transition. I thought I had notes on this. And it'll be a really inspirational and a very gentle transition with Neptune. Inspirational, having insights to integrate this. So meditation would be very good, music, being out in nature, allowing yourself after, you know, maybe having those squares from Saturn and the opposition from Uranus, that hard truths and uncovering and recovering that's going on. So then Neptune comes in like this oceanic water and just kind of sweeps you away in a good way, not in an uncontrollable way, in a calming way. So like maybe you're safely on the beach and you hear the sounds of the waves, and that calms you and it gets you back into your own rhythm, and it gets back into your own coherence with the heart and the sound of nature and the sound of the divine. Jupiter also then trining those planets really allows you to have a big picture view, and then to take the inspiration and perhaps the kind of the right-brained approach of Neptune, and it helps, Jupiter helps form it into a very coherent mental picture, and can place it in a larger, more expansive mental field. So you kind of get the connection between your individual mind and mentality, and then the larger picture and the group mind. Excuse me, perhaps. One last thing about Mars, and I think I've probably mentioned Mars in many of the last several months. It's out of bounds right now, and so it's really extra strong and a little wild. So it's out of the band. It's just a little bit higher than the usual band, so it's a little out of the sight of the sun. So It's a wild card, okay? So it's also this is from Adam Gainsburg, paraphrased. It's in its maturity phase. It's testing, applying, and assimilating the new, more realistic self-image that we're working on with this new Mars and Scorpio cycle, which began a year ago in October, and the Mars and Scorpio cycle will end next year. So that's where the inception of this was, when Mars was in Scorpio. And so here we are in Scorpio season. So again, kind of looking to Mars, it being out of bounds at this time in the sign of Gemini now, communicating, bringing up different viewpoints. So the Mars and Scorpio cycle, again, just a little pithy little paraphrase from Adam Gainsburg, but living a real, honest, raw life, emboldened and responsible. Going back to that Saturn authority, seeing what is the authority in the outside world, but also like reworking that, having with the face of uncovering things, and then also accepting and owning one's own authority and responsibility. Just a really big push toward exposing what's been hidden. All right. So from there, Mercury and the Sun, but Mercury especially, so looking at the heavens and looking at the nakshatra, the little area of the heavens, and pull it up in the sky, or you can see where Mercury actually is and the Sun actually is, and that's pretty cool and very easy to do. Mercury is really close to the fixed star, Zubin El Ganubi. It's the southern scales, and I did a crude little drawing. So Mercury is right up here, and then that's the Sun and the line there. In the actual sign of Libra, but it's also, the Greeks called it the claws of the scorpion. These two stars, Zubin El Ganubi, and they're really fun to say, Zubin El Shamali. And pardon me if I butchered those. Okay, so I haven't done a lot of work with fixed stars, but they do pop up here and there. And it is just cool to connect that dot, literally. So they're both right in the middle of the gateway. As you can see, the gateway that constellation draws. So the Greeks called it the claws of the scorpion and not the scales, like Libra. As from Astrology King, it's quote unquote the insufficient price. It's got this area of the heavens, has the nature of Saturn and Mars, so it can be very harsh or it could be very cruel. And the scorpion's claws are used for making love and for slaying its prey. So isn't that an interesting connection? And that kind of goes through both the nakshatra for the moon, so the small little area of the heaven that the moon is occupying, and then also the area that the sun is occupying. There's something about death and rebirth, love and passion and creativity and death, okay? I just wrote, keep a very clear heart and head. Actually, that might have even been from that site. So there could be what starts under the guise of love can also turn to strife. The deity associated with the area where the sun and Mercury and Venus are is Indragni. So it's a combination of Indra and Agni. And Indra is the life force or the soul, the prana. And Agni is our inner fire and our inner fire of willpower. And so into Indragni, they're uniting together to awaken within us the power of determination, devotion, and ambition to move forward and progress. The Shakti for this is the power to penetrate through all things. Tendency towards impulsivity and being short-tempered would be some of the negative characteristics. But I just think about that character penetrating through all things and how, vibration and super subtle vibration, how deeply that can penetrate in. But again, keeping your head calm and clear and not manifesting the lower energies that may come up at this intense time. The area of the heavens, where the moon is at with Uranus and the north node, is ruled by Yama, the Lord of Death. He presides over the resting place of the dead. And it has that area of the heaven, holds within it the power to clear impurities and to move on and just clear things away. So there can be tremendous power in that area of the heavens, both power of creativity and sexuality, and that cycle of death and rebirth. The ruling planet Venus is the sacred place of nurturing and growth with the power to quickly manifest. We have, so then another thing I just wanted to write, of the area where the sun is, again, is that decorated gateway used for marriage ceremonies, or it was like a tree spreading its branches, giving protection to others. So just come into your heart and your high heart, the area between the heart and the throat, and the color white, diamonds as stones, anything that are clear crystals that give clarity, and that the energy of the white light and calming. And at that time, so I'm wearing my black shirt, got a little black hat on it today, kind of honoring the Scorpio energy, but also just showing up. I haven't had a lot of time lately, it's been very busy, but I'm also just being here a little more direct, and I spent less time preparing for this, and so just showing up, but being prepared, be clear. I guess that should really be my mantra for all of this, shouldn't it? You guys are like, yeah, it'd be a lot simpler if you did that, Amy. But anyway, at this time, allow yourself the grace of time for practice and meditation, and keeping your breath and your energy field clear so that you don't have to prepare a lot, and you can go forward with clarity because you're really centered in your heart and your body. The area where the moon is in, there's also a connection to just really being embodied and being in the root of your body, being in the root chakra, and really being grounded there, being grounded into the earth. And the root chakra really stores a lot of the energy of the body. So again, coming into the potential that you are and that we are. And no matter, I remember the teacher who would say, the world is at war because the mind of man, humans, the minds of humans are at war. But that doesn't mean there has to be war in here, in your heart. That's a choice. You could be in the middle of the battle, the middle of the battlefield, and you may have to do your duty if that's what you have signed up for. But we personally don't have to be in war. And the more we turn away from that energy and consciousness, do your work, do things that you feel that you're called to do, as far as any again, duty or justice that you're called to do, and that's your dharma and that's your path. But keeping that sense of clarity of what you can have peace within yourself at all times. I kind of got off there. Does that make sense? Okay, so I just wanted to kind of end with just saying, please just give yourself the time, and it may not be pleasant, but it'll be fruitful, to look unflinchingly and honestly into your own shadow, really gazing into the mirror and seeing all of it, seeing the harmonious parts, the inharmonious parts, looking at your life, kind of gazing back, and your own karma, some of the things that perhaps you got right, and some of the things that maybe weren't as right, and not shaming, allow yourself to just notice them, because we're all human. And then kind of taking a zoom out a little bit, if you've got children and a family of your own, looking at how your karma and choices have set up patterns within your own family that you've created. And again, not shaming yourself or blaming yourself, but just noticing. And then zoom the camera out to the family you came from and the patterns that you were brought up in, and how they affected you, and how they affected the people from whom you came and were part of the tribe with. And again, no blame, no shame, just noticing. And then maybe zoom out again to encompass your ancestors and the patterns. Then you could take a bigger zoom, and it could be your national karma, and even maybe you came from other countries, or the bloodlines come from different countries, so the threads get a little longer and wider. And then maybe even zoom out as a human, as not being in any nation, but as a human, how you affect the karma and the energy of the world. And just owning that. Just notice that this is the dance on this earth, and sometimes we're dancing to some dissonant music, or we're in a mosh pit, and then sometimes we're waltzing, it's a Strauss waltz, and then sometimes it's a beautiful just tone, or the vibration of Om, or silence, or the wind. And just noticing this fullness at the full moon, the light and the dark. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time.